Hello everyone, my name is Jochen. I am a travel agent that specializes in safaris in Southern and East Africa. Through my Belgian company, the Africa Bug, I've been selling custom-made safari itineraries for almost 15 years now. About 7 years ago, my wife Mira and I became FAGASA certified wildlife guides. Now, I'll explain more about guiding qualifications and all that later on. But 5 years ago, we decided to make Kruger our home. So since then, we've been permanently based in the Kruger area. We've worked at various lodges as a guide and management couple, typically. Some of those lodges were based in one of the Kruger Private Reserves. Others were based outside of those reserves. So during that time, we've also guided in Kruger National Park. Recently, we have started our own lodge. So I guess you can say we have lots of good knowledge and information to share with you about the whole Kruger area. So using our combined knowledge of our area, we decided to create these videos. Hopefully they will help you to decide what safari experience is the right one for you, and we hope they answer all of your questions. Now, we know that finding good information can be a mission. For example, you might wonder where to go to, Kruger National Park itself or the Kruger Private Reserves right next to the park. Some online communities like the Kruger discussion group on TripAdvisor, for example, they rave about the park itself but dismiss the private reserves entirely. Yet other groups again, like the discussion board on photos, for example, they preach exactly the inverse, and they even go as far as to discriminate between reserves. So one reserve is paradise, while the other one next door is pure hell. And then lots of travel agencies also don't help really, because they also paint a black and white picture, and they rave about particular expensive lodges on particular reserves, while dismissing others as being completely unsafe or unhygienic, or offering subpar safari drives and so on. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself again, because we'll go deeper into those things in the videos, but obviously what they're telling you is BS. These travel agencies are just trying to shove the box over the counter that gives them the biggest commission. That's it. So, from the perspective of someone who wants to visit Kruger for the first time, these black and white visions, whether they come from travel agents or from visitors, they're not useful at all. It's not easy to find balanced information, we know that. And even Google doesn't really help much, because whatever your search terms might be, about all of the top spots in Google's results are taken up by expensive lodges and agencies with top marketing budgets. So even the things you get to see on Google aren't really representative of what is to be had as safari options in Kruger area. In this series of videos, we will try to look beyond all that. We will hopefully answer any important question you might have. So not only the park or private reserve question, but all types of questions, such as what type of accommodation do I choose? When do I go? What are the best wildlife spots? How to optimize your safari results in terms of amount of species you get to see, and so on. If you're one of those people looking for good Kruger information, your search is hereby over. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a good G&T, and watch these videos. In total, they might take a couple of hours of your time. I mean, we do try to be as complete as possible, but that's still far less time than surfing the web for days and still coming out empty-handed or walking away with information that's seriously biased, maybe even without you knowing it. We hope you enjoy our videos, and if you still have questions in the end, please feel free to ask. Enjoy the videos, guys. Okay, so which chapters do we have in store for you? Well, this video continues with an overview of the whole Kruger area. We'll show you a top-down view of Kruger National Park and the private reserves right next to the Kruger Park. We will also point out important towns, airports, and attractions nearby. By the end of this video, you should have a clear view of the whole Kruger area. In our other videos, we will actually focus in on different parts of the Kruger area. So, for example, in our second video, we will solely focus on Kruger National Park itself. We will explain different regions, what types of rest camps, and so on. In our third video, we will focus entirely on the private reserves. We'll explain what's different when compared to Kruger National Park, and we'll cover all private reserves with open borders to Kruger one by one. Then, in the fourth video, we'll go over what other attractions the region has to offer, and what travel destinations are ideal combinations with Kruger. The fifth video contains tips and tricks on how to get the most out of your Kruger safari. And finally, in the sixth video, we'll bundle all important questions we often get, and we will answer them one by one. Right, let's start with that overview of the whole Kruger area. And let's start with Kruger National Park itself. Here you go. This is Kruger National Park. As you can see, it has quite a long border with neighboring country Mozambique, about 300 kilometers in length, that is, from north to south. But the park isn't that wide. Like on average, it's only like 50 kilometers wide or so, from west to east, that is. Only the southern section is a little bit wider. But that's Kruger National Park. It is state-owned. It's owned by the government. Now, to get into Kruger National Park, you have Kruger gates. Here we go. There's quite a few, but you can only enter the park through those gates. You have to pay your entrance fee if you haven't paid it already. And then from there on, you can do a game drive, or you can go to your rest camp or satellite camp. So Kruger actually has typical accommodation that you do not see outside the reserve. They're called rest camps, and the smaller version of that is a satellite camps. I'll go into what the difference is between the two later on in a separate video. But yeah, let us put them on the map first. There you go. So there's quite a few, and I'll explain what rest camps are in that later video. Then we have to add to this map a few important other landmarks. First of which is the R40 road. As you can see here in the south, it goes from Phalaborwa mining town through Hoedspruit, down, through some very busy communities like Eekhoornhoek and Bushbuck Ridge, all the way to Nelspruit. From there, basically, there's a highway road, national road, leading all the way to Maputo in Mozambique. And why is that road important? Well, because it's a busy road, which actually has lots of trucks that take anything that the mine produces, mica, copper, and so on. It takes that to the coast and typically to China. Not only is there a road here, but it's also, like, for the most part, very close to that road is also a railway line, basically transporting the same thing. I put this on the map because for me it's important so that I can show you guys later why basically Kruger National Park does hit some boundaries, and this road and that railway line is typically one of those boundaries. And then obviously we have to put all the airlines on the map, the airstrips on the map, sorry, which first of all is KMIA, so that's Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport, close to Nelspruit here in the south. And then we have Eastgate Airport, that's close to Hoedspruit. And then we also have the Phalaborwa Airport, close to Phalaborwa mining town. It actually sits right on the border of Kruger. If you're flying to Kruger, basically you can have a charter flight to any of these three airports. You cannot fly to Kruger directly from wherever you are. All flights go first to Johannesburg. It's kind of the hub for the whole of Southern Africa, and from there you've got multiple flights to these three airports close to Kruger. Okay, so just to be complete, I'm putting also the three towns on the map that I spoke about, so which call themselves the safari capital of the world, and might actually be right on that. Like, it's a very busy town when it comes to ecotourism. And then there's Falabora mining town, and there's Nelspruit, or Bombela. It's a local name in the south here. So as you can see, there's quite a few things on the map already, but I am going to show you some more stuff. I'm going to put some more stuff on the map, and I'm going to zoom into this central section here because this is where the private reserves of Kruger are. And let's start with Sabi Sands here, the blue part, here in the south. And then we'll go further up north. We've got Manyeleti, and then we've got Timbavati, and its partner, let me put it that way, a small reserve called Umbabat. They do lots of stuff together, so I'm putting them on the map together. There's Thornybush, the latest addition. They dropped their fences with Timbavati, so those as well, that reserve as well, is now part of what we call the Greater Kruger Area. So I'm just going over all the private reserves that have no borders towards Kruger. So animals go from the Kruger and back. They just go anywhere they want. Unlike people, they have to go through a gate and all that. But animals go wherever they want. So Thornybush is the latest addition to the Greater Kruger area. Then we've got more north. We've got Klesiri Reserve, and finally we have Balule Reserve. Actually, the reserve that has been expanding the most in the last years, because this is one important thing. Ecotourism, especially the private reserves, is kind of a success formula, and more farms are converting to ecotourism. So those reserves are getting bigger as farms join up with certain reserves. Now, this is not the only big five areas, big five private reserves that the neighborhood has. There's a few more. There's first of all Kapama, which is that blue section here, 12,000 hectares. And then there's Chukuru, which is that little blue thing here, like a little tip out of Balule, close to Hoedspruit town. And then further away, opposite end of the R40 road, we've got Karongwe and Makalali. I'm putting these on the map as well because they are private reserves that offer the typical Big Five safari experience. So you can see the Big Five animals and more. They all have those animals. It's just that, the latest four that I've added now are not part of the Greater Kruger area because they have a border in between them and the Kruger. So for Karongwe and Makalali, that's quite obvious. The road is in between them. But basically Kapama and Chukuru, they could join up, but they don't. Like, they'd rather do their own thing, so that is why they're not joining up. Now, we'll go into whatever accommodation is on these private reserves later on, but just like for Kruger, where I pointed out all the rest camps, I'm also just going to show you all the lodges, the private lodges that are on all these private reserves. And you'll see there's quite a bit to choose from. So unlike your typical Google results where the most famous lodges always pop up in your search results, and you might think, oh, there's not that many options, and those options are rather expensive. That's not actually correct. Like, there's lots and lots of lodges on these private reserves. So you have lots on Sabi Sands that reserve is the most commercialized, I'd say. I think in total there's like 52 lodges. So my apologies if you can't see them all, but it's not important right now for this overview. It's just to show you how many options you have. And further on towards the north, you've got Manyeleti, and then those in Timbavati and Umbabat. As you can see, there's quite a few. Thornybush has lots. Klesiri has not that many as the other reserves, but it's getting there. Balule has a lot of them as well. And then Kapama, Chukuru has one lodge only. Then you've got Makalali and Karongwe. So as you can see, lots and lots and lots of lodges to choose from. And as I said, we're going to go into all these areas separately in a separate video. I'm not going to go into all the lodges, but I will give you some idea of what's to be had and what the differences are between different types of lodges, because you can also have different types of lodges. Now, Kruger National Park did see the success of the private reserves, and they wanted to get in on that. So basically what Kruger National Park has been doing, they have been eking out private concessions in their park where no other roads are, where no self-drivers come, and this and that. And those concessions have been leased off to the highest bidder, and then so private companies now can establish their own lodge there as well. So basically there's now private lodges doing exactly the same thing as on the private reserves, but in Kruger themselves. So this is the lodges I've added here. There's a few more in the south here. Just for completion, I need to put those on the map as well, and I'll speak about those later on when we speak about private reserves and private lodges in a separate video. Are we there? No, we're not there yet. I'm going to show you some other things that are important because they have lots of accommodation to choose from as well. And those are the smaller reserves and the typical estates, as we call them. Smaller reserves typically do not have the big 5 animals. The wildlife estates, likewise, they don't have the big 5 or maybe not even any of the dangerous animals. But they have some nice plains game around and this and that, and very good accommodation. So let me just put some on the map. Lovumzi is one here on the Olifants River, but it's rather far away if you want to get to Kruger. There's Wild Rivers, which sits at the confluence of the Olifants River and Bladder River, which is actually not too bad if you want to just skip across to Balule if you can. Then you've got Bladder Wildlife Estates. I don't think it's very much commercialized. It's rather local people that have their private house there. The Wildlife Estate in Hoedspruit has lots of lodges. I think there's more than 40 now typical houses you can rent in entirety for bed and breakfast and stuff like that. And then you have some more here. You've got Leadwood Estate and Zandspruit Estate, which are neighbors, and Raptors View, which is also a neighbor here. So there's plenty of big reserves with some houses on and small lodges on and this and that. Some are not very commercialized. Some don't even allow it. Some are commercialized. But I'm just putting them on the map because it's wild areas that offer you various types of accommodation. And then there's Moditlo as well, which is very known, just on the opposite end of the R40 road from Kapama. I will not just show you all the lodges you have on there because that would really flood the map. Because as I said, there's lots of them. For example, the Wildlife Estate has more than 40 already, so that's just unthinkable to put all those lodges on this map. It would not serve any purpose. It would be very, very unreadable. Okay, so is this the whole Kruger area then? Well, no. Basically, I have to point out some other things, which is all the attractions nearby. We have the Panorama Road here nearby, and that's on the mountainside. And I'll speak about the Panorama Road in a separate video again when we're talking about combining Kruger with other attractions nearby. But this is basically that route, the Panorama route. And it's got things like the Bladder Canyon, which is the biggest green canyon in the world. It's got boardwalks, potholes, lots of nice waterfalls, God's Window with an awesome view onto the low veld, and so on. Pilgrim's Rest, the old mining town that's very well preserved, and so on. Depends on what you're into, but there's lots of things to see and do on that Panorama Road. And since I'm pointing that out, I'd rather also point out all the accommodations you have. Let's say mountainside, on both sides of that escarpment, because it is basically an escarpment, this green section between, it's actually between the low veld and the high veld. And low veld and high veld have different weather types, different types of animals, and different types of temperatures, vegetation, and all that stuff. So it depends on where you want to stay. Like in wintertime, it's better perhaps to stay down on the mountain. In the summertime, if you want to get a little bit cooler, you can get up the mountain and all that. But there's plenty of places to choose from, and I just need to point them all out because just to be complete when it comes to showing you this map. So let me do that first. We've got some options here in the low veld. I don't know if you saw them, but they popped up between the reserves and closer to the mountain here. We've got some more now that are closer to the Bleda River coming out of the canyon here. And then you've got some around Graskop, Norikstad, some around Pilgrim's Rest, around Hazyview. There's plenty of choices. That's low veld again. Some around Sabi, which is on the panorama route on the mountains. And then further south, sorry, you haven't seen that, but that is all the lodges that are very known around Nelsprad. And then to the west of the panorama route, and I don't know if you saw them all here, there's also plenty of lodges on the high veld already. Quite some nice areas there. There's some more around Barberton, so that's the south point of Kruger. And then, just to be complete, the south end here of Kruger, in between that busy road and the Kruger, also has some private concessions, estates and all that. And that's around Malelane Gate. So if I point out all the lodges here, plenty more lodges to choose from. So now you have a complete view. I'm not going to tell you anything more about all these options around the park. Again, I'll do that in a separate video. I'll show you the difference when it comes to vegetation types on top of the mountain and down from it, the difference in animals, the difference in things you can experience and get to see there, and so on and so forth. So that's not for this video. I just wanted to give you a complete overview of what actually is available around Kruger area. And as you can see, there's plenty of things to discuss, there's plenty of things to talk about. So the next videos will be rather complete. I'm sorry if they're quite lengthy, but I'm trying to be complete as to give you the best possible information so that you can make the best possible choices when it comes to organizing and putting together your Kruger safari and to optimize your results for your certain budget and length of stay. So that's the whole purpose of all these videos in essence. All right, so I hope it's a little bit clear now what the Kruger has to offer and what we'll discuss. So yeah, I hope to see you in the next videos.